good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, or good middle of the night, whenever you happen to be watching. And welcome to, I think that's probably about my 11th video on kind of foraging in COVID times, these strange times we find ourselves in. And today we're exploring the Saltmarsh, which is kind of really exciting for me because, yeah, it's just a lovely place to be. And it's so unique in the kind of range of plants that are there that it's really worth kind of looking at. But because like any habitat doesn't stand in isolation, there's always something next to it. On the way down there, we'll also be kind of looking at hedgerow plants as well. And yeah, it's kind of interesting because I'm going to take you on a circular walk. I'm not kind of sure how far it is in distance, maybe a couple of miles. It usually takes me, if I'm just kind of walking and not stopping much, about half an hour. I'm just laughing because I'm thinking, if I do what I normally do, is just like, you know, stop at everything and talk about it. This could be like a 5-hour video. But what I'd like this to be more is just focusing a little bit on the identification. And I was going to do this live, but the reception was so bad that I decided not to, which is actually quite a good thing because the video quality should be a lot better, so I can we can kind of zoom in and look at some details of hairs and on stems and things like that. It's also a good thing I'm not doing it live because wow, I had a bit of drama last night, and yeah, so I've been working on a recipe that some of my recipes there, I kind of make them about once every 5 years because they're kind of a bit involved. And the one I was working on last night was working with immature pine cones, making both jam according to kind of traditional Russian ways of making immature pine cone jam, and wine, which is an interesting one, and yeah, candying them as well. And in order to do that, I needed to boil it like multiple times, and we're talking like up to 20 times, to get out all the tannins and get out all the kind of red color that just keeps coming, which has other uses, so not just to be tipped down the sink. But anyway, I was on the last boil, 11:30 at night, put it on, kind of lied down thinking, great, finally it's kind of running clear. And guess what happened? I fell asleep. I was woken by the kind of screams of my sister saying, Fergus, the house is full of smoke. Yeah, so my intensive labor, which some of it is very pleasant to be honest, like hanging around the pine trees and picking pine cones, resulted in this. Well, there they are after it's been, I think, 5 days of boiling and changing the water to get rid of the bitterness and the tannins, and I was on the very last boil, and on the very last boil I forgot about it. I put it on just before going to bed at 11:30 and woke up to my sister shouting at 1:30 in the morning, oh dear, the house was full of smoke. Not so great, but I'm going to try and save some because I rarely give up on a recipe, and these were going to be coco-candied. So now I'm still going to pursue it. They've got an incredibly smoky flavour, charred flavour, But you know, these days it's all the rage, isn't it? In like top restaurants, Michelin-starred restaurants, the concept of things not just being charred but burnt, like, you know, burnt leek, burnt tomato, and this is you know, a feature is made of this on the menu. So I think, you know, if I can salvage these, they will be coco-candied charred catkins. Coco-candied charred catkins. Coco-candied charred, no, I can't say that. That's a tongue twister. So, but I did have some real success yesterday. I finally completed probably what is, I would say, one of the most absurd, insane, elaborate recipes that I've been working on. Is a kind of hint of what it is. Look. Ooh, so yeah, that turned out really well. The other thing that turned out really well is I did a kind of let people know I'm doing these kind of live videos on Instagram, and you know, I did like a 15-second little clip saying join me tomorrow, but in that I always try to include like something to look at, and I had some well, here's the clip, you'll see, and the question. I forage at 10 on the Saltmarsh and around the hedgerows, and yeah, I had first elderflower fritters last night, and I did an experiment with these as well, which is Hawthorn. If you want to know how it turned out, join me, I'll let you know. And the result, I thought I'd say this, just because, you know, if you really kind of annoy your sister who's got to get up early for work by filling the house full of smoke, it's also lovely to kind of delight your sister with a recipe that works. So we had elderflower fritters for the first time last night, and I tried the young, just opened sprigs of hawthorn blossom as a tempura, as a fritter, and the result was, yeah, my sister said they were better than the elderflower in terms of flavour. Slightly harder to eat just because the nature of the way they grow. But anyway, I that's my pre-ramble, you could call it. Now, another thing I'm kind of interested coming down today is that I come here quite a lot, and I made a list of the most kind of common edible plants down here, and I've kind of divided them into like hedgerow and kind of saltmarsh. So I thought I'd just kind of tell you what they are so you can kind of know what to expect in this video. And as I say, it could take me a long time to walk around stopping and finding all these things, if I find them. And I'm going to try and add to this list, because there's always lots I don't see. But in making these videos, I'm putting them up to YouTube with timestamps. So if you're interested in what a particular plant looks right now, at this time of year, we're just at the very end of April, then you can just forward and have a look at that. And yeah, so here, look, I'll read it quickly. This is the list. So here we've got hedgerow, broadly speaking, because, you know, I don't literally mean a hedge. I just kind of mean kind of the edge of arable land. Yeah, could actually be a hedge, but you know, that kind of place. That kind of place. So we've got hawthorn, elder, hogweed, nettles, cow parsley, dog rose, Japanese rose, common dock, burdock, horseradish, great plantain. Curled dock, ribwort plantain, greater plantain. Did I just say that? I'm tired. It doesn't sleep very well after all that burning. Fennel, sloe, wild asparagus, jelly ear mushrooms, bristly-ox tongue, oxeye daisy, ash, common thistle, sow thistle, blackberry, ditanda, mugwort, sweet chestnut, shepherd's purse, roseberry, willow herb, field horsetail, hedge mustard, common mallow, thanet cress, yarrow, corn chamomile, pineapple. If you can see that. You can't see that. Where is it? Where is it? This very, very rare plant. You see that? It's backwards. Anyway, it says pineapple wee. Pineapple wee. Anyway, pineapple weed. I obviously meant D key doesn't really work on my laptop. Hazel, wild salsify, wild carrot, and then on the Saltmarsh proper, we've got sea purslane, sea aster, sea scurvy grass, sea arrowgrass, sea purslane, sea beet, sea plantain, annual sea blight, marsh samphire, fat hen, fig-leaved goosefoot, nettle-leaved goosefoot, and English scurvy grass. So, you know, a few things to look at. I'm not sure where we'll see all of them, because when I wrote that list, it was, I think, if I recall, mid-July. But yeah, do you know, I want to start with something which is just over there. I'll flip the camera around, because it's something that puzzled me for a couple of years, wild food wise. And one of the fortunate things about when you are puzzled with wild food, sometimes like all you need to solve the puzzle is to wait, which is what I did. But sometimes it's how like the first leaves that come up from a plant can be very, very different from the later leaves, which you might be more familiar with. But anyway, let's go and have a look. So here it is. I wonder if any of you recognize that. Here's another one. If I zoom out, I think you might recognize it. So we've got these quite distinct, kind of rounded and even toothing to the leaf. So this is horseradish. Now there's loads of it around here, and member of the cabbage family, and from an eating point of view, it's really great. We've got going by here. Oh ho! It's really great. These very young leaves, actually delicious. I mean, a slight bitterness, but real lovely horseradishy flavour. When we get to these kind of older leaves, they're kind of best kind of bored up and kind of used as cabbage. They lose quite a lot of their mustardy flavour fresh, and obviously when you bore them, they've lost a lot of that flavour. In fact, when they're that old, they don't have so much of the mustardy flavour, or at least it's really masked by kind of bitter flavours. But boiled up as cabbage, it's kind of really delicious. What else we have? Oh look, we got a Coke bottle. Someone's chopped the end off. I wonder why. Probably putting petrol in their car or something. It kind of makes me think. There's an absolutely wonderful film, if you've never watched it, called The Gods Are Crazy. And someone throws a glass Coke bottle out of a plane, and it kind of lands somewhere. I think it might be in Australia or somewhere. But anyway, it lands amongst some kind of indigenous community, and it's just how this artifact of the modern world can impact on their kind of life. It's really, really worth a watch. So we've got here, it's quite a big leaf, looks about the size of my hand, is Malva sylvestris, which is kind of a bit strange because sylvestris means of the wood, and it never is of the wood really. Maybe woodland edge, but yeah, it seems to like a kind of sunny location, and this is common mallow, and it's all edible, but you know, like anything, like the condition that you're eating it in is or gathering is key. So you know, a lot of getting kind of eaten like that, it's kind of common sense, obviously, and not so much now, but as the year advances, oh no, it's a little bit now, we get this, I don't know if you can see that, and there's a kind of little orange, kind of looks a bit like rusty spots on there. So we don't want that. So we're just looking for the really nice leaves. So these ones here, the kind of new growth, and that just that whole little cluster can be used both in salads and as a vegetable or a thickening agent. It's really nice in soups that way. But look, while we're kind of talking about horseradish, or just talked about horseradish, superficial looking plants, we've got common dock without that, you know, with a straight leaf edge, unlike the horseradish. This one in dock family, not the cabbage family, but good to eat. Needs a boil in a change of water to kind of moderate the tannins, but did a video where I kind of use it as a leaf wrap. I really like to use it like that. Another thing, plants. Let's call it plants. Let's not use the word thing. I'll try and avoid that. See if you can catch me out using the word thing. So also, yeah, there was something else that I was going to show you that was horseradishy. Oh yeah, of course, that's down on the Saltmarsh itself, probably the most horseradishy thing, which is Ditander. But here we've got probably Bristly-ox tongue. Really lovely plant. And well, there's two that are very similar. It's Hawkweed ox tongue and Bristly-ox tongue, but you can use them both as salad or vegetables. And the stem is absolutely lovely when it grows up a bit more. It's just coming here. It's kind of quite small. You see that kind of stem there. Kind of peel that back and eat the centre bit. It has a flower very much like dandelion, but unlike dandelion on the ox tongues, you have multiple dandelion-like flowers on the same stem. Couple of non-edibles here. We've got some ragwort coming, which you might think you couldn't really muddle for anything, but I mean, it tends to grow in full sun. It's looking a bit like some kind of black chard or something at the moment, but yeah, I've seen it growing in shade right next to wild rocket, and when it's growing in the shade it does look a lot more like rocket, so I guess you could muddle it. It's not an edible plant. It's great for insect species, quite a lot of insect species. We've got some kind of spurge, Euphorbia species. Has a kind of latex that can irritate the skin. It's not an edible one either. What I saw just a minute ago, which I kind of liked, was, oh, here we are. Two members of the carrot family growing right next to each other. It's always good to compare things which are quite similar. So we've got wild carrot itself here, quite a young one, just forming a kind of rosette, and we've got cow parsley over here, and you can kind of see the difference in terms of the hairs on the stems. Look at that. The cow parsley has very kind of fine short hairs, whereas the wild carrot has much longer, softer hairs. Both good and edible, but all members of the carrot family, particularly ones that are kind of quite ferny like this, you have to be careful that you're not picking hemlock. What's that down there? I wonder if I can actually get around here in an hour or so. Highly unlikely at this rate. But of course, on a sunnier location, we've got cow parsley in flower. Flowers are edible. The leaves are still edible. I mean, they're not as great as when they were, well, you know, slightly younger. And these are better. From a point of view of eating. Oh look, we have another member of the cabbage family here, and it's really distinct. You find it a lot. Well, it kind of likes salt marshes. We're not at the salt marsh yet. Or it likes roadsides, particularly where it's been salted, because you do find it enjoys or can tolerate like habitats that are quite saline. So kind of estuary, salt marsh, salted roadsides. Let's pick a little bit of this. See how the kind of base of the leaves. Oops, can you see that? Distinct leaf edges. So it's all edible. When I say all edible, I'm just, unless I specifically say the root, I'm excluding the root in that. And I'm also, when I say something all edible, I'm assuming also that we're talking about like the tender parts, although there will be instances where you can use the non-tender parts to extract flavour for drinks and things like this. But aha, look, we have red dead nettle. I know some people make pesto out of it. I've never tried, to be honest, but I think you could probably make pesto out of any spring green. I mean, it's not one that I really enjoy the flavour of, but I should say that when I say things like that, I like to think that it's just because I haven't worked out the best way to use it yet. But I do like the salad, the flowers, the little tops in salad. It's a member of the dead nettle family, or kind of mint family, and they all have opposite leaves and square stems. This one's quite distinct in terms of, I must say, I've not really noticed this. There's the black borders of the square stems. I wonder if that applies to all of them. Let's have a look. Yeah, not so much that one. So I guess just natural variation. So this is the first of the mugwort I've seen this year. This is a wonderful plant. So flip it over, it's really quite silvery on the underside. That's because it's very hairy and the hairs are really compressed flat against the leaf. So very aromatic is mugwort. Let's pick a bit. Mugwort. Artemisia vulgaris. Used in all sorts of ways as a flavouring for stuffing meats, things like chicken or goose or whatever, pheasant, whatever you happen to have. Imparts a aromatic kind of flavour to that. Used extensively in kind of making alcoholic drinks, but I guess the most exciting thing about it is its use shamanically, both as a tea smoked or for kind of lucid dream work in a pillow or something like that. And I've had great experiences using it that way. Now here we have this, I wonder how the contrast of light is. So this is a rose, and actually I'm just going to see, because I'm going to see if there's more, because I think there is. I know there is, because I've been here before, because that's very young ones from having been cut down. So this is Rosa rugosa, or Japanese rose. I think some people call it beach rose, which makes a lot of sense, because although, yeah, it's commonly called Japanese rose, its beach rose name, it tells you perhaps that it's somewhere where you are likely to find it. And that, well, maybe it doesn't tell you this, but it's I think it's a native plant. So what's really interesting though is you see it here, it's growing in that kind of hedgerow, and it grows kind of quite high up. I mean, look, this is really high here, but when you see it growing on the beach, it's often growing what's the word, prostrate, so really flat on the shingle. So it's kind of shingle beaches, like the top of a kind of shingle beach. You'll find it growing probably prostrate, because it's just worshipping the sea, because the sea is definitely something worth worshipping. I was in there last night in my wetsuit. That was it's probably why I've got a sore throat today, because I drunk half the sea trying to get my daily exercise. So yeah, this one has big kind of blooms that are kind of about that big, and they can be white or they can be kind of red, and they're delicious for tea, for kind of pickling. They're really nice pickled, actually, kind of a sweet pickle. It's a delicious thing that goes with all sorts. And the hip is very different from kind of dog rose, which I expect we'll see, because the hip of this is, well, let's say a dog rose is about that big and that shape. The hip of Rosa rugosa is about that big, and it looks like a very small pumpkin in terms of shape. But I really like it in terms of its greater versatility of use compared to something like dog rose. I mean, dog rose is just excellent for all sorts of things, the hip of the dog rose, but it doesn't have such a thick flesh, whereas the hips of the Japanese rose, you can get a sharp knife and you can peel a substantial part of the flesh away and just put it in salads or desserts raw. Some of the old dried hips there. Oh, we've got some common vetch, member of the pea family. Flowers nice in a salad, and the young shoots as well. It's a vegetable, or in a salad. Ah. Look at that beauty. Huh. I'm going to have to. I lost myself on a cold, damp night. I gave myself in that misty light, hypnotized by a strange delight, under the lilac tree. I made wine from the lilac tree, put my heart in its recipe. Oh, look at that. Yeah, so years ago, on the basis of that Jeff Buckley song, which my sister absolutely loved, she requested that I make her a gallon of lilac wine, which, being a lovely brother, I did. And being a lovely brother but not such a great winemaker, I must say that it was kind of repulsive. The colour didn't hold up, not like that. It changes just through fermentation. But yeah, there are many things you can do with lilac. I mean, one of the loveliest things actually is just get some of these just opened blossoms, and a bit like you do with cleavers, just put it in water just to impart a lovely flavour in kind of spring water. That's really, really nice. And look at this glorious birch, silver birch, and catkins, or birch, yeah, can use in all sorts of ways. They're collecting the sap, the young leaves in tea. They're getting a bit tough now. Literally, you've only got to... Well, actually, you could use them as tea now, but I was going to say in salad, it's probably best, like I say, for about 2 weeks after they've come out. We've got Cleavers, or Goosegrass, or sticky willy. So it has a square stem, a bit like the mint family, but it's not a member of the mint family. The leaves are very different. They're in whorls. And particularly when this is kind of younger, I mean, even now, like the tips are going to be fine, actually. Kind of used as a vegetable. Kind of or a puree, pureed in a smoothie, or put it in water to make a drink. Oh, here. We've got an aromatic member of the mint family here. It's called ground ivy. That's so square stem. If you can see this, not focusing very well. And these very distinct flowers, but I mean, just picking it, in fact, even before I picked it, the aromatics coming off it are really, really quite strong. So, you know, a couple of those leaves in a salad. It's quite bitter, but the flowers in the salad are very nice, or used for making syrups, and then all the extensions that you can make with a syrup, be they sorbets, ice creams, meat glazes, you name it. There, what we've got there. Oh, that's one thing I missed. I wonder if that's on my list. I'll check. Sycamore. Member of the maple family. It's not a native maple. Our native maple is our field maple. There we are, the flowers there. Yeah, so the main food use for sycamore is extracting the sap. It's sweeter than birch sap, and the season's a little bit early, so earlier than birch. Certainly in the southeast, kind of typically around beginning of February. Here we got great plantain, Plantago major. It could possibly be intermedia, but I think it's major. Doesn't really matter from a food point of view. They're both edible. This is an excellent leaf to use as a vegetable, but it takes a little bit of work. I might splice in a video of like how to do that, because it's something I really, really enjoy working with. And not just like the leaves, but last year I discovered how amazing it was to work with like the veins, which you kind of really need to remove to make it tender enough to eat. Also, we've got perhaps the iconic hedgerow plant, which is the bramble or the blackberry. Now, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a video just on the uses of the bramble plant, just because they're so extensive. So I won't mention too much about it. And here we have something that looks a little cow parsley like, but is not. This is Hemlock. Smooth stem. Blotches on the leaves, but this one isn't as blotchy as some, I must say, and that's where, oh, there we are, but they're still there. Still there, not an edible plant. We've got a whole field of, look at that colour, we've got a whole field of rape here, oilseed rape. Now I don't know if this has been sprayed or what the situation is, but last year I got some from here when, in fact, oilseed rape hasn't been grown in this field for a couple of years, so some other, I think it was wheat or something last year. And in that situation, you often get some growing very nearby as a kind of escape, quite away from the field actually. And I do tend to eat that, because I don't have to worry about sprays of things. Now, here we've got a very distinctive member of the cabbage family. Its name deriving from the shape of the seed pods. They're like little hearts, really. You see those? It's a flower you probably can't see, but like members of the cabbage family. It's four-petaled, kind of opening like a cross. You see that? And whether the seed pods are arranged, well, whether the seed pods are kind of long, kind of bean-like things, or like little hearts like this, they're usually formed on this long, I think they call them racemes. That's a botanical term. But yeah, so right now we've got the very immature seed pods, which are edible, and the young flower. But it's one of those ones that I gather a lot for the seeds and then spread them around, because the young leaf growth is absolutely brilliant in a salad or as a vegetable. We've got here. We've got some burdock there, but it's in very good condition to show you. We've got hawthorn, which, because this side of the kind of hedge is shadier, it's not in flower yet. Most of the hawthorn I've seen is in flower at the moment. But, oh, actually, I'll show you this, because see those? I'll just pick a couple actually. Oh, so they're just at this kind of size, even a little bit bigger, when I love to pickle them. But yeah, the leaf, the immature flowers, the fruit, the mature flowers obviously, particularly when they've just opened and they're really fragrant, all have food and drink applications. Oh, we've got a cherry, and I don't know which particular cherry it is. Sure, we've got probably just like a wild cherry. There we are. There's one forming already. Cherry blossom used as a flavouring, particularly the really ornamental ones with like loads of pink blossom. People like to make jams and syrups and wine out of them. I'm going to show you this just simply because okay, I could be a little bit rude and do you mind planting? Just something like to kind of show people. But anyway, so what we've got here, well, it's probably one of two things. It could easily be overlooked, couldn't it? Or you might think it's some kind of garden escape, some kind of cultivated vegetable. Well, it's a couple of plants that grow around here. One is delightfully called Jack Go to Bed at Noon, and the other one is wild salsify, or salsify, however you pronounce it. And let's see, we can open that up to reveal the immature flower head. Yep. Oh, there it is. It's not ready to come out just yet though. I think we might see some. In fact, we'll see it's got, you see that? It's quite a lot of latex. Comes out, kind of white latex. But you can cook and eat that whole section. It's very nice before the flower comes out. And the root is good to eat too. Now, a plant, there's much better examples of it back there, but look at it. But this is one that, there's the whole leaf. So this is common hogweed. Now, note it's not giant hogweed, it's common hogweed. And the hairs on the stem are much, much shorter than on giant hogweed. The leaves are kind of a lot more of a kind of rounded appearance, and the plant is generally a lot smaller, particularly when it's at its mature height. But nevertheless, you still have to approach it with caution, have to approach it with respect, but also, yeah, don't decide not to avail yourself of its delicious food qualities, because it's really worth it, particularly these young, oh, the sun's getting in there, these young shoots here. Absolutely delicious. And again, I'm probably going to do a whole video just on that plant, but they can be eaten cooked. We've got some sowthistle here. Which one's this? Smooth or prickly or hybrid even? I think this is smooth. So again, like the whole of this plant can be used. You can pickle these immature buds. Not as easy to pickle as dandelion. They tend to open out. You've got to get them really small to be worth pickling, like kind of in there, those little ones. But flowers in salad or for wine or all sorts really. The leaves, particularly before it comes into flower, really lovely in a salad. More shepherd's purse. See, what have we got around? These little plants on the edge here. Oh look, here's some basal leaves of shepherd's purse. As I say, before it comes into flower, and if you gather a seed and you sow it yourself and grow it in kind of dappled shade, you can get really lovely leaves for a salad. It's really, really small ones. But really the solution to getting good edible stuff is to find stuff that's growing in a more shady situation. We've got here, I expect, not sure which one is this. I think it's corn chamomile. It's much more easy to recognise by the flower. But we also have a lot of pineapple weed growing around here, which looks kind of similar, but again, easier to recognise when it's in flower. Look at all this shepherd's purse. Fortunately, I don't think there's any seeds just ready yet. Ah, now here's a wonderful plant, which is burdock. Another member of the daisy family, but not the dock family, although it has dock in the name. And probably just about this point, it's a biennial, so it takes 2 years to grow. This one I can see is on its second year, so this central part is going to become flowering stem, which will, well, by I'd say about mid-May, kind of the end of May, like the base of the stem will be about that thick, and will be about kind of that high. It's like a 3 foot high, and have a really, really wonderful central core that we can eat. That's something I'm going to feature in a video at the time. Right now, because it's on its 2nd year of growth and it hasn't put all its energy into making the flower stem, we could dig that, bearing in mind permissions and all the rest of it, to use the root. Root is really excellent. Got some hawthorn blossom there just coming out. Actually, to be honest, this is where I like to pickle the blossoms, and let me find an ideal one. Sometimes you can find one, I mean, this is kind of coming into flower kind of unevenly, but sometimes you find ones where all the flower buds are just about to burst, but none of them are opening. Yeah, pretty actually, let's see, pretty much like that. Pretty much like that. They're the ones I really like to pickle. Cold pickle in well, vinegar that I've made out of Hawthorn wine, actually. But you could just put it in any vinegar, or even if I'm using my own vinegar from Hawthorn wine, I kind of do 2/3 vinegar and 1/3 water, just so it's not too vinegary, and just kind of put that in salads and things. What we've got here, we've got elderflower. Elderflower is kind of out in abundance at the moment. Had fritters last night. These are great for hot pickling, immature flowers. Leaf has medicinal usage for its antiviral properties. Well, the same goes for the flower and the berries too. Lots and lots of hemlock. I find, I mean, it's not exclusively the case, but very often, you know, when you're thinking about muddling hemlock and cow parsley, yeah, you need to be aware of the botanical differences in terms of the hemlock, you know, having blotchy, hairless stems like that. Cow parsley having unblotched, hairy stems. But often I find that, you know, hemlock, where it is growing, tends to predominate, and the same vice versa with the cow parsley. But this is an interesting situation, because a couple of times it's kind of happened. You see the hemlock here, and like hemlock can grow like about 6 foot or more, and we've got elder here, and I guess this is the importance of not making any assumptions, and if you're picking a flower, like follow it down to the stem to like check it is growing from the plant that you think it is. Because I've been in situations before, and I was working with a group years ago, where very much like this, the hemlock, which has a flower superficially like the elder when it comes out, certainly in terms of very loosely in terms of its growth form, but the hemlock flowers were all growing up in amongst the elderflowers, and we were picking loads of elderflower to make elderflower cordial, and one lady picked a whole basket of hemlock flowers, and there I was, you know, gathering everyone's baskets and consolidating it all into one sack, obviously checking, because I always do. But I did look at this one, its basket came in, and I was just thinking, oh yeah, it's another basket of elderflower. But I looked and it wasn't, and she'd been really careful to make sure she'd only picked all of the same flower, which was good kind of attention to detail, but she'd picked just all hemlock flowers. Now, often I kind of do look for, I'm always looking for like signs of things that have been growing somewhere in a previous year. particularly like old dead growth, so I can go back and get the new stuff. So here we've got all kind of old growth of, probably see it's got the kind of round seeds of sticky willy goosegrass. Gallium aperine, which we saw earlier. In fact, there it is, look. There it is again. Obviously well established here. Now, it's Bristly-ox tongue everywhere. Oh, I wonder if I can find one with a big enough central stem. Be worth. Yeah, it's not bad. Right, doing this one-handed. I thought, you know, we've focused more on the plants. I think we've seen enough of me lately. That's real stars of the show are always the plants. So, I'm obviously trying to peel this one-handed. It's not going to make me the star of any show, but as we walk along, I shall peel it with my teeth. Like where we have a dog rose, well, it could be field rose, and to be honest, I've never really gone into looking precisely at the botanical differences, but from the point of view of harvesting the flowers and the rose hips, it doesn't really make much difference. I did know once, and now I've forgotten. Right, I'm going to peel that with my teeth. You see, it's got quite a bit of latex. See that? Got some apple blossom. It's a crab apple. Let's have a look. Sometimes, when I'm not quite sure if something's a crab apple or something, I just look down, and often there's kind of rotten fruit from the previous year, but don't see anything. But there we are. I've peeled that stem. You see it's got quite a lot there that's nice and succulent. Bit of nice chewing noise for you. Ah, now there we are. That's what I'm talking about in terms of hawthorn blossom. All absolutely perfect for cold pickling. Just perfect. Yeah, it's kind of all at the same stage. Look at it. All about to just burst like a firework upon the summer. Yeah, and what I do with those, I haven't really told you. So, I mean, when I've pickled them, when I make salads, I tend to just add some olive oil and some, random wild pickles. So it really works well for that, or on a cheese board or something. Now, here we have a plant. There's quite a lot of it, which I'll show you some of the young leaves, because there's more of this kind of bronzed appearance. See that? And then older leaves are really quite they're not dense, they're kind of quite widely dispersed in terms of the very kind of fine leaves. Yeah, this is a type of fennel that I think it's nationally scarce. Hog's fennel. It's just all over the place here. But as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have any tradition of use as a wild food. Look at that. That is a absolutely glorious hogweed shoot. Be careful I don't squeeze that too hard and release any sap, get it on my hand. Don't want to get blisters. More red dead nettle. Yarrow. So yarrow is great in beer, tea, the very young leaves. I'll file up there, look. Like these very little ones, or it's getting a little bit bigger. Kind of nice in a salad. Just a few because it's quite tannic, so I don't want too many. Now we saw Thanet cress earlier. Here it is at a kind of later stage. It's much more easy to see that it's a member of the cabbage family, opening with 4 petals like a cross. Alternate leaf growth. It packs a bit of a punch in terms of the flavour. It's quite intense. And here we've got a, whew, that's intense. We've got a thicket of sloe. There's usually a better one. And finally we are out on the Saltmarsh. We go straight down onto it, I think. No, let's just walk along a little bit. Oh, look at this. So we have here wild lettuce. Has a lot of latex, this one, look. Look at that. So yeah, you could just about use this as a... Hello. Oh yeah. What did you like wild lettuce? What do you think? Nah, doesn't like wild lettuce. Yeah, it's very bitter. You could just about use it in a salad if you're really into bitter flavours like I am. But it's quite good. I used it once when, gosh, I drove all the way up to Birmingham. Make it sound like it's a long way, it's not that far, but to go and see the Dalai Lama like years ago, talking at the Birmingham Arena or something, and I had terrible sciatica, so much so that I couldn't drive back. I couldn't sleep, it was awful. So I was using a lot of that plant for both helping me sleep and pain relief, and it was just utterly wonderful. So we've got here, we've got a prickly sowthistle. It's very kind of prickly at the edge, and I like to just kind of take these top clusters and cook it as a vegetable just before it comes into flower. It's really nice. And the leaves I'll put in soups and stuff. It comes out, the flower's a bit like a dandelion, but kind of multiples of them. Some more burdock. I don't think we mentioned burdock, did we? Because, yeah, we did. Yeah, we saw a nice one. So very excitingly here, well, if you get excited about docks, is this is kind of no ordinary dock. This one here, and well, what I'm actually loving is that we've got 2 docks that are very different. One, which is the one I most commonly use, which is here, which is broadleaf dock. You can see it has much more kind of blotchy purpleness going on in the stem. Like all docks, it kind of unfurls like a kind of rolled tongue, if you're a tongue roller, you know what I mean. But yeah, So that's, what is the botanical name? Rumex obtusifolius, common dock or broadleaf dock. But this one here, which is, I think really you only find kind of in London or the southeast, it kind of superficially looks a little bit like kind of horseradish in terms of the leaf. But yeah, it's basically like broadleaf dock or common dock, but it's just that much bigger. And the great thing about it, this particular dock, which is, let me think, common name is Greek dock, and I think it's Rumex cristatus or something like that. But anyway, it'll be in the links, the botanical name. But yeah, what makes it so good compared to broadleaf dock is it's far less tannic. So you can just enjoy these leaves in a salad or as a vegetable, or if you cut out this kind of central vein, you can use it as a leaf wrap, like a vine leaf. And then these stems, you can, look how thick they are. You can just kind of cut those and eat the centre. It's probably, of all the docks, just given its kind of size, it's the most useful for kind of using the stems, even like the leaf stems. Here, look, they're pretty big, like rhubarb. But yeah, because that's a lovely find, because that, I know it's in this general area. There's some really big colonies of it, but I hadn't seen it down here before. I didn't see it last year, so that's new to my list. Aha! I thought we'd see white dead nettle at some point. So we saw red dead nettle. So this is white dead nettle again. Square stem, opposite leaves. Lovely in a salad. The flowers, and they've got a nectary at the bottom. That a sunny day. Oh, yep, there's a little bit of sweet nectar in there. That one just kind of sucked out. But yeah, you can use the whole plant, the leaf, the flower, as vegetable, as salad item. We've got sprawling up here. Aha! This is what's commonly called. Oh, we've got one kind of shoot coming there. Got more down here. It's kind of more, look, looks like it's old dead growth, but actually we've got new life bursting forth. So yeah, old man's beard, or Clematis vitalba. And yeah, in various European countries, the young tips, I believe, are boiled. I followed whatever the procedure was years ago. And of course, there's like so much to do with wild food. It's just something I've completely forgot about, but I don't remember exactly what I did. But yeah, look that up. So it's the one that come late summer, autumn, and over winter, it will just be full of. They've all gone now, but the kind of cotton, kind of opened up, kind of bits of cotton-like seed. Well, not the seed cases. What do you call them? You know, the bits that help with wind dispersal of seed, I guess. I don't know, but anyway, they're all over the hedgerow, making the hedgerow look really pretty in the winter. Someone with a pram giving room, social distance. But actually, can't see her. She's hiding now because she thinks I'm coming. But I'm just going down here onto the Saltmarsh. So this tortoiseshell butterfly, apart from collecting dandelions for my tortoise when I was 4, that particular beautiful butterfly is the second main reason why I got into wild food, because I just found them so fascinating, finding the caterpillars on nettles. And I used to take them home, and I used to get nettles, fresh nettles, and then I used to feed them. This is kind of about 7, and they used to pupate, and I used to get the cocoons, the pupas, and I used to glue them to like old like twigs, like, I don't know, look, something very much like this. Oh, it's a snappy one. I used to kind of glue them like hanging all over from something like that, and then used to wait till they went through that magical process of metamorphosis, and then watched as the cocoon kind of went translucent and you could see the developing butterfly, and then I used to just watch, absolutely riveted, as they would break the cocoon and climb out. Absolutely wonderful. I think as a result of that, I was absolutely fascinated by nettles as well. So here we are, we're down on the Saltmarsh. I'm just looking around to see what we've show you first. I guess right up on the top. So by the top I mean where the kind of Saltmarsh becomes the adjacent habitat, well, the edge of the Saltmarsh. When I said earlier, like, you know, every habitat has the one next to it. They're more, what's the word? Is the word contiguous, or is it the other word that means running into? Runs into kind of field edge or hedgerow or whatever that habitat happens to be nearby. They kind of run into each other. But yeah, sea beet, basically Saltmarsh, edge of Saltmarsh, like coastal grassy areas by the coast, top of shingle beaches. So I would say, you know, if I had to be pushed to say which is kind of in my top 10 of wild plants, this would certainly be in there. And I'd put it in there simply because it's so delicious, it's easy to find, and it grows in abundance. So it's all edible. The root's edible as well, cooked. It's a bit it's not so pleasant raw. But these, like, look at these little red growths here. This is a plant at a very, very young stage. Possibly, if I've got a photo and it's easy to do, I might splice in a picture of what it looks like when it's older. So it starts off like this, and we could let's put it down, put it there. You could eat it at that stage. It's getting a little bit older there, not much to be honest. So this grows particularly on the kind of upper edges of the Saltmarsh, but also like throughout really, and on the edge, but it kind of grows in kind of particular clusters around the edge. It's annual sea blight, absolutely delicious plant. And yeah, I use it extensively, particularly like pickled or as a vegetable, but really when it's a bit bigger than that, when it's kind of, I don't know, about an inch long. Now look at this one, this is really distinct. So look, we've got alternate leaf growth, as you can see. We've got petals, 4 petals opening like a cross. And so it's a member of the cabbage family. It's growing this kind of rosette form. Don't all do that, but this one is. And this is a really distinctive Saltmarsh plant, and it's scurvy grass. The question is, I always get them muddled up, which is English scurvy grass and Danish scurvy grass. So it's scurvy grass because, yeah, it used to be used by kind of sailors to prevent them getting scurvy, which is caused by a lack of vitamin C, because it's very high in vitamin C, as you know, I guess many wild greens are, but this one in particular, and it really is very pungent in flavour. Look at that. friend of mine, Miles, he started a Facebook page called Foraging for Kids, and people posting lots of very short videos on there, and I really like, have a look at it. He did a very spontaneous introduction to scurvy grass, where he's telling the story of scurvy grass as if he's a sailor, and yeah, it's really good. I've got some more. Pretty sure this is English. Yeah, this is English scurvy grass. Now the other thing, we've got several plants here that you can muddle up, actually. He says, probably muddling it up himself. And we got that. Yeah, so we've got two right next to each other. So one, a really good edible, that so much so that a couple of years ago, I don't know if they stopped doing it, but they were selling it in Waitrose. But note the base, it's kind of quite thickened, right? And the leaf is really quite thick. Look at the base. So this is sea aster. It's a really lovely plant. I don't know about the roots, but all the rest of it's edible. But it's growing right next to a plant that's not edible, which is sea lavender. But superficially, it's very similar. But the base, the leaf, is not growing from some kind of big, thick part. And it's less succulent, the leaf, and it's a little bit more rounded, quite a lot more rounded, but kind of natural variation means that you can muddle them up. Now, of course, you go to a salt marsh, often one that forms extensive mats is this glorious plant, and it's glorious because there's so much of it, but also that it grows all year round, unlike some of the salt marsh plants. So there we are, just forms a thick mat. It's lovely when you come down in the summer and harvest this, or just on a really sunny day, and you can do all your foraging or not, just visit the salt marsh just to enjoy it, and just lie on this stuff and just bask in the sun. But it's one of those plants, like many of these, like called halophytes, which means they love salt, or they can like or tolerate saline conditions. I'm kind of wondering actually, what if I love salt marshes, what does that make me? Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, I can't think of any clever Latin term to describe a human that loves salt marshes. But the leaves can be eaten raw or cooked, and when they're cooked, they go kind of really, really lovely, vibrant green. Another thing that's really fun with well, what I didn't say, like a lot of these, like I guess that when I think of halophytes, I really think of ones that take up salt into their plant tissue, like not just externally because they're getting covered by salt water, brackish water, seawater on the really high tides, which makes them salty as well, but like internally, and you know, it's just part of what they are, who they are, that they take salt in that way and thrive in those conditions. And plants that do that, and I'm thinking here of this one and the annual sea blight, which we've seen. And let's just see if we can, before I mention it, let's go right to the edge and see if we can see the other one that I'm thinking of. In fact, we might find some not down in by the muddy edge, but around here, although it's very early. We're in late April. And what I'm talking about is Marsh samphire. So those three, Marsh samphire, sea purslane, annual sea blight, very salty plants. And you can actually take advantage of that and use them as a seasoning, either kind of fresh or, like, ultimately you want to kind of feature that salt component of them, is wash them really well, obviously, and then dry them and powder them, and you get what I call like green salt or a botanical salt. So you've got all the minerals of the plant, obviously, and you've also got the amazing salt component, and they will have different quantities of salt in them. So the saltiest one would be the Marsh samphire, which I can't find. Don't know if I'll see any. The least salty being the sea purslane. This one, surprisingly, when you eat the leaves, it's very salty. Now I'm just looking at this plant here, and yeah. So this one, it's very young as yet, but this is one of the plantains. So I think in these videos, what we've seen so far, we've seen ribwort plantain, great plantain, buckshorn plantain, possibly plantago intermedia, and this is a lovely plantain. This is probably, I would say, the two plantains that are the simplest to use just as is, without having to do much, without having to worry about them being tough or anything like that. The two that are best for that are the buckshorn plantain, which I think I showed you in the last video when I was by the sea looking at seaweeds, and this one, which is sea plantain, because like a number of plants that are adapted to the saltmarsh environment, like the sea purslane, they're almost kind of succulent, semi-succulent. So although when this gets bigger, it can start to look quite a lot like ribwort plantain, it never really develops those veins, and it's just a lot more succulent and just lovely just to use straight as a vegetable. I'm just going to pick a little bit, simply because I want to show you it compared to, well, oh, that's great, because this other plant, which is right next to it, which is a delicious plant, I'm going to kind of lay one out there. And then grab a little bit, this one here. You see, it's a much grassier leaf. It's probably not the nicest place to put it, so you can see. Hang on, let's find a better bit. Clear a bit of mud. This is better. So here we have sea plantain, and here, and just look at the way that the leaves, the patterning of where the leaf kind of grows out. Here we have sea arrowgrass, which has an amazing coriander-like flavour. So you get a marsh arrowgrass as well. I've never seen it, and I'm not sure if it has the same flavour, but sea arrowgrass used as a flavouring. But do look at, consult, I've mentioned this quite a number of times, it's a wonderful site called Plants for Future, and it will, if you put a plant in by common name or botanical name, it will come up with a whole load of food uses, but also kind of contraindications, warnings about the plant. And I think the one they have for sea arrowgrass, for the life of me I can't remember the botanical name. Is it Troglachin maritima? I can't remember now. Or is that something completely different? But anyway, it's yeah, it says that, you know, the greener parts contain various substances, that aren't great. So I think that one, it's used in small quantities. Look at that scurvy grass. Now is the season for scurvy grass, that's for sure. I'm having a little munch, but to be honest, I think you've got to be extra cautious with eating plants from the salt marsh, because, yeah, well, that's delicious. They can get covered with quite dirty seawater, and yeah, give it a good wash. The other thing I would say about salt marshes, and we'll see this a bit more as we get right to the edge, is the fact that, you know, everything is growing out of this mud, which, wow, look at that, here it is. I was going to say that I'm tempted to stand in, but I'm not. Look, I don't even have a big stick to show you, but look at this. Oh, can I? How much weight can I? No. So yeah, you've got to be careful of walking on salt marshes. You can disappear down into these things. But yeah, the reason I want to talk about the mud, the sediment, is that sediment can really accumulate things you don't want in your food. And kind of look here, you can see I've got an old boat yard there. And I know that where we are, the North Kent coast here, so in former times, particularly during the war, this place was very busy with a lot of construction and yeah, gunpowder making going on all around these parts and all sorts of things. And anyway, as a consequence, and not just that, but you know, all the lead paint on the bottoms of boats, it's really accumulated in the sediment here, and it takes years and years for that to kind of recycle away out of the environment. And in the meantime, it gets accumulated in the salt marsh plants. So yeah, lead levels can be quite high, as well as kind of other associated things that you kind of don't want. So yeah, do be cautious about eating kind of food from a salt marsh, particularly any quantities, and certainly if you're pregnant or anything like that, because as we know, lead is really not in any way beneficial to a growing child. Now, but you know, if you're kind of a healthy person and you're careful with your portion size, then you know, you can eat a little of salt marsh plants. And you know, if you're on a really clean salt marsh, probably more. Now this is what I was looking for. So this is marsh samphire. It's very young. It's traditionally picked on Midsummer's Day, kind of mid-June, the end of June, and kind of through to September, really. It's kind of good. It's not really in focus, is it? There we are. Come on, get in. Please focus. Is that focused? Yeah, so this will, although it's just kind of one kind of branch, this will eventually, actually look, let's create, let's make a composite plant from these. Any opportunity to play in the mud, I'm there. So once we get into later in the year, it's going to be more branching, more of a branching form like this. This is not a very good example, but you get the idea. Be kind of more like that, and even the branches will branch as well. So yeah, you've probably seen that at your fishmonger, either if you're lucky enough to have a fishmonger in your town, or independent one, or a supermarket. You will see that on ice being served up when you're buying fish, because they go well together. Now we've got some right on the edge. That stuff. I once was somewhere like this, and yeah, I ran. I don't advise this, by the way. It wasn't quite similar because it didn't have a tidal current in the middle, but it was kind of mud like this on an estuary. And I found that if you sprinted really fast and absolutely did not stop, you could run across it without sinking. But if you stopped, disaster. It's a bit like, if you've ever seen those, it's really worth having a look at. That's really quite funny. Videos of people running across huge vats of custard powder. That's been mixed with water. Gosh, I'm really risking it here. And yeah, so it's kind of liquid. And when they run across it, just the compression of the feet on the wet kind of custard powder, or corn flour, essentially wet corn flour, makes it act like a solid. But as soon as you stop, and it's a bit like Saltmarsh mud as well, you start to just disappear into it. Although Saltmarsh mud, it doesn't have quite the same characteristics in terms of being hard when you run it. It's just the sheer fact that you're sprinting across it. You don't have time to start sinking. Right, what else have we got? Now, this is the thing. If I'd kind of recce'd here before, I could have shown you this before I even started talking about sea plantain, because here we are. It is much more advanced. And in fact, what I really like about this is, if you're familiar with the flowers of plantain, whether ribwort plantain or any of the plantains, you'll know that they kind of come out. There's one, look. It's an immature flower. So these are at the absolute perfect stage for using as a vegetable. Succulent, without the veins of ribwort plantain. Absolutely marvellous. I expect you could collect the seeds, and oh look, that's looking obviously plantain-like, look. I expect you could gather the seeds, and I've not done this, by the way. I mean, do gather lots of seeds and spread them around and try to grow them. But you could gather the seeds and grow them. I saw that James Wong, the ethnobotanist James Wong, has a series of kind of unusual seeds that you can find in garden centres, or where his seeds are being sold, that kind of people don't generally grow. And I was surprised to see a couple of years ago that his company was selling Marsh samphire seeds, and I thought, wow, how do you do that, and how do you grow that? And the instructions were to, I can't remember, but you planted them in soil or kind of mud, but you watered them, and I think so you made a diluted weak saline solution, essentially. I think you put like a teaspoon of salt in a pint or a litre of water or something like that, and yeah, you could grow them. So I expect you could do that with other halophytes. When I say halophytes, I mean particularly the ones that take salt up into their tissue and thrive in that way. So here we've got another bit of sea beet. Lovely, wonderful wild food. No flowers yet. I'm sure we'll find some with flowers. Now, it's one plant I always get really excited about finding. Well, okay, I do get excited about finding you just because you look so beautiful, but it's not what I was talking about. Although there's a superficial similarity, I will grant you that, particularly these young leaves. Now, what I was going to say is I really love finding Ditander. Here we have teasel. Probably recognise teasel from the dried seed heads that used to be used for teasing wool or used in flower arranging. But look at these. I think I might have showed one in a video the other day, but the kind of teeth, if you like, on the back of these leaves are really sharp. They're just about tolerably sharp now, in the sense that they're not going to scratch you or cut you, but as if this gets more mature, it can really, really scratch you quite badly if for some reason you rub your hand on those. Yeah, I was looking at a website last year and it said about 10 wild plants that what was its tagline? I can't remember. Something like 10 wild plants that you never knew were edible. And yeah, there were ones that I did know were edible, but the one that they did have on there was the teasel. And I thought, well, how can that be edible? It's so bitter. And yeah, my goodness, it made me try it again. And yeah, I just still don't get how that can be used as a wild food. Now, this is really nice because let's just see if there's any. Yeah, let's just show you some nettles out in full sun. They're getting a kind of bronzed appearance on the edge of the leaf. It's not focusing very well. That's better. Slightly bronzed appearance on the edge of the leaf. But the thing about nettles, which I really love, is that, and this is not necessarily a saltmarsh plant, right? It's not a saltmarsh plant, it's just a arable land, kind of field edge, woodland as well, woodland plant. It crosses habitats. Now, not all plants do that. Like, you would never find any of these halophytes in a woodland, just on the saltmarsh. But nettles are kind of pretty much a generalist. And so when at this time of the year, like the ones in full sun, the leaves are getting a bit tough, and that's the time to start looking in shadier areas. And that's when you find lovely, lovely, gorgeous nettles like this. Look, at which point you can kind of eat all those bits, raw or cooked. Raw ways that don't involve being stung, i.e. lacto-fermenting, blitzing in a smoothie, shredding really finely, putting in a salad, rolling hard under a rolling pin, or yeah, just cooked in any recipe that calls for spinach. You could just put nettles in there. But anyway, looking at them in these two different situations really prolongs the amount of time that you can use them. So what I'm looking for now is that it down there? Yes, it is. It's a plant that, and here's some bigger stuff. It's an absolutely gorgeous plant, and it's called Ditanda. Right, I'm going to flip this around and talk about it. So at this time of the year, I mean, this will grow up to, well, actually, you can see there's some of the old growth. You see that? We can't see it very well. There you go, against the sky. But it can grow up to, I don't know, typically around kind of 4 or 5 foot. But this time of the year, and it's a perennial, so it keep growing from the same kind of rootstock. And you find it as well on the edge of roads that have been kind of salted. And at this time of the year, you can just, let me show you. See, you can just snap it, and it's kind of tender there. But later on, that becomes tough quite rapidly. It's just going to fall over on me, you can see. So, this plant, it's such a great one, because when I think of like the intensity of flavours of wild food, and if I was going to do a kind of 1 to 100 scale, 1 being like the most mild, something like lime leaves, Tilia species, or chickweed or something like that. Yeah, it would certainly be members, I think, of the cabbage family that would be kind of towards 100. But this one is a funny one, because like years ago when I kind of worked at a farmer's market, one of the farmers said to me, Fergus, so what are you picking at the moment? I think what he actually said is like, so what kind of like flavourless things are you picking at the moment? Because he was a grower, prejudice against the joys of eating wild food. And I said, oh, just this flavourless plant called Ditanda. Yeah, it doesn't really have that much flavour, but I like it. Anyway, so I kind of gathered some of the farmers who were stocking up the veg store that I was managing, actually, and I got them all to take a young leaf, or a couple of young leaves, just like that. And I forget where the camera is on here. And I said, we're all in a circle, and I said, yeah, let's just kind of all try this together. And I kind of bigged it up, or rather downplayed it, as a kind of really flavourless plant, and I said, right, okay, we'll all kind of all eat it together, just because just to get the flavour, see if you can pick up the flavour, because subtle flavour. Boom! I mean, the flavour of this plant is definitely 95, 100 in terms of intensity. It's, I guess, essentially, you think of the leaf of horseradish, you don't generally think of it, well, as being the main part of the plant that has flavour. It's like the root. Well, essentially, the leaf of Ditanda tastes like the root of horseradish. So sometimes when you're eating it, it can literally make your eyes water. It's so high in kind of mustard oils, but it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Now, if you cook that as a vegetable, you'll boil off the volatile oils, and you can just enjoy it kind of as a cabbage. But it's really nice to take advantage of that pungent flavour. So you can use it in wasabi. I use it a lot. Sorry, not in wasabi. I use it kind of as wasabi in, like, with sushi. And if you dry it at a kind of quite a cool, warm temperature, not cool, what I say warm, what I mean is, like, I use a food dehydrator, and the setting on there is, I think I put it on, herbs or living foods, so it kind of keeps it below like 42 degrees or whatever it is. But anyway, the point is that you're less likely to burn off the volatile oils, and you can get a nice dry powder from that still has some pungency, not as much as at all as eating it fresh, but still pretty good. So yeah, Ditanda, wonderful plant. Switch round again. Some more hog spennel. It's very kind of bushy. I was saying earlier, well, I'm not sure if because it cut out, this video cut out at some point. Decided to flip around into portrait mode for no explicable reason, and just cut out too. So I don't know if I finished saying that hog's fennel, that one, this one, as far as I know, doesn't have any tradition of use. Question is, do you think I've eaten it? That is the question. That is the question. Some young burdock. Be good to get the root from there. We have spear thistle with its, I often mention this to kids and adults, this kind of X-wing fighter, if you're a Star Wars fan, shaped leaf tip. Look at that. So yeah, I use this a lot, particularly the root, actually. Nice tender roots, like sliced really thinly and kind of marinated with fish is very nice. But I also dry and powder the leaves and sieve out the kind of thorny bits and use that in pasta and pastry, soups, all sorts of things. More burdock. Burdock root of these plants would just be kind of perfect for digging up if you had permission to do so. Oh, look, I'm glad that I was drawn in there, because you probably spotted it even before I did. Look, some jelly here. But yeah, burdock root. It can be quite hard to dig sometimes, and yeah, often when I'm passing London, I pop into Soho and I go for the lazy option, and I go into Chinatown and I get really long roots to kind of grate for my courses to make pakoras and things. I used to spend hours and hours digging them up, and I still do sometimes. But here we are on an elder. The thing I love about elder is, yeah, you've got the leaves to use medicinally, you've got the immature flowers, the mature flowers, the immature berries, the mature berries to all use in the way that's appropriate. And but then you've also got the jelly ear mushrooms, these dry ones, and they can be picked all year round, which is the advantage of them. So, that's a dead bit of elder. By the way, that really is a dead bit of elder. But I would say that if you do come a bit of elder, particularly in the winter, that's like covered in jelly ears, that looks dead, and sometimes elder can just look so dead. And I remember, like one time, like I picked some jelly ear, and then there was some great stuff like really high up, and I thought, oh, I really want to get that, and I was kind of jumping and trying to get it. In the end, I ended up snapping what I thought was this dead bit of elder, and yeah, and I could clearly see that actually there was some kind of life in it. And so what you think looks like dead elder often isn't, so be careful with it. We've got these rapidly growing shoots, which are very, very interesting, but more medicinal. But there are some creative food uses for that, but I'm not going to go into it just in this video because it's very specific. And but I'm going to do a whole video just on elder, a celebration of elder, because the time is rapidly approaching when it's all going to be in luscious bloom. And the moment will have come for, yeah, celebrating that fact. So these jelly ears, let me see if I can, just want to show you, oh look, got some more wild lettuce here. What I want to show you, basically I'm looking for somewhere I can put it down that won't have been, it's not on the ground and won't have been weed on by dogs. It's on a footpath here, but I'll show you this jelly ear. Oh, that one's a good one. So let's kind of see what size that is dried. It goes up to, yeah, like the last kind of wrinkle in my thumb. So I'm going to stick that in my mouth, and you're going to see like the size it gets when it's kind of rehydrated. I'm going to take these ones with me too. So jelly ear, Auricularia judea is the name. Used to be called, and still is in some places, Jew's ear. Look at that, very, oh, is that the one? Very ear-like. Is that the one, or is it with the other one? Oh, they're both about the same size. So I'm going to put both in my mouth, actually. But anyway, it's great because you can pick it all times of the year, and it's very easy to identify. It grows 99% of the time on elder as its favoured tree. And you can find it on other things as well. You can find it on field maple and sycamore. I found it on quite a few different things, but only, some of those, like, I've only found once, like on various barbarous plants. And buddleia, I found it on once. Found it on a black mulberry once. But generally, it's just going to be on elder. There are some people waiting for me to go past. Thanks. Thanks. And I can't remember what I was saying now. What was I saying? Yeah, easy to identify, partly because you can identify an elder, then you can, you know, if you're looking for things that look like jelly ears growing on elder, well, they are going to be jelly ears growing on elder, that's the point. And yeah, you can gather them all year. Sowthistle in bloom. And you can gather them both fresh and dry. Now, I really like to gather them when they're dry like this. Now, the only thing about that is that it's not quite as easy to see that they're in really good condition. I mean, sometimes it is, but you know, they could have kind of been breaking down, been a bit maggoty, which is quite rare, but it's possible. But eventually they will break down. But if they were soft and breaking down and then they dry, and you're just picking those and sticking them in the stew because they seemed all right because they were kind of dry and they were next to some good ones, then you can just end up putting some really not very pleasant ones in your stew. So yeah, be kind of extra careful when you're picking them dry to make sure you've got good ones. Right. I'm going to say goodbye to the Saltmarsh. And hello to the hedgerow again. Excuse me for talking with my mouth full. And I think we haven't got far to go now. This is a couple of more plants that we're going to see. I haven't seen. Oh, this is my home. Keep it clean. I have oxeye daisies here. Oh, stay in focus. Really doesn't want to, does it? Nope. There we are. So oxeye daisy, the leaves can be eaten during the winter, the salad, and throughout the year. And the big kind of white petaled daisies when they come out. And those immature flower buds, I absolutely love to salt pickle them and vinegar pickle them and candy them. And look, here we've got an example. I'm always looking out for is plants that, if they're growing in full sun, can, yeah, they just put on an extra kind of, I would say, like a hard shield of resilience in terms of their appearance. And by that I mean The leaves can be smaller, they can be tougher, just to withstand that kind of harsher light and more exposed conditions, where as you just go somewhere a bit shadier, and I wonder if that actually, I wonder if I can show you an example of one that is in those sunny conditions. But we've got a sowthistle here, smooth sowthistle, which a couple of them, is it? Yeah, a couple of them. And really lovely and tender. Gonna eat one of those in a minute. Newsflash, we interrupt this transmission to bring you news of a smooth sowthistle growing in completely different conditions on a dry south-facing wall without much soil and no shade. And look at that. You would hardly think it's the same plant. Yes, it's a slightly younger stage, but look how red the leaves are. It's a sign that it's kind of stressed in a sense. Got a kind of another one there. And there's some down there. But that just shows you the kind of extremes of range that the form of a plant can take. I've actually often thought, because I've observed this over the years across multiple species, wouldn't it be great to do a book that showed you the extreme ranges of a plant's form and a kind of average one in the middle? Yeah, that's just one idea. I have an idea of a new book kind of every day. I never write any because I don't like writing books. I like being outside. Oh, we've got a, think it's probably, I find some of these prunus species hard to decide whether they're cherry plums, Bullis plums, sloes, a hybrid, certainly a hybrid between sloes and Bullis. But I see they've all got all this very mature fruit has got infected with a fungus, and it's, look, it does this to them. Get that in focus. Really hard to focus things one-handed. There we are. This looks like a little potato, doesn't it? Now I found that once that's established in an area, it can really kind of reoccur like year after year. Some years really quite a lot, so that you don't get much fruit at all. But other times the tree just seems to really kind of bounce back and still produce a lot of fruit, even when I've thought, oh no, it's kind of doomed. But there we are. So this will be worth checking later in the year. I think this is a cherry plum. There's ribwort plantain. It's kind of interesting, look, because we saw the sea plantain on the Saltmarsh, and we've just come, I don't know, not from, we could, if we just went down onto the Saltmarsh now, which is about less than 100 meters away, we'd find some sea plantain, and would see, you see this is much thinner and much more distinctly ribbed and veiny, but yeah, very, very similar, very similar. Right, I'm just looking for some sowthistle in full sun. Oh, okay. You'll be relieved to know I'm just going to take this jelly out of my mouth and disgust you by showing it to you now. See how it's swollen in size. Look at that. So it was like down to, it's kind of basically doubled in size, hasn't it? Like, the edge of my wrinkle of my thumb. Now I can eat it. Along with the sowthistle. I can't see any sowthistle in full sun. Whole load of little ducklings going along the river there. I think there's quite a few things that were on the list I initially read that we haven't seen, but I think we've seen the vast majority of them. I just think there's a few more out here to be found. And possibly some things that weren't on my list. Ah, I know, one thing I wanted to try and show you was the wild salsify. I wonder if we'll see any of that in flower, because it's a much more sunny location here. But yeah, let's keep looking. Here we have an ash with its distinct dark buds. There we are. Just bursting into leaf. We can harvest the ash keys. This is the one that produces clusters of seeds. They don't have yield. That depends on sex. But these leaves, particularly when they just get a little bit bigger, maybe, I don't know, twice the size of that, kind of that big, make a excellent vegetable. That was my discovery of last year. You boil them briefly in a couple of changes of water and then refresh them in cold water and, you know, dress them with some kind of spicy oil. Really, really delicious. You spot the moorhen twitching its backside in my direction, or maybe nothing to do with me, just twitching its backside, but that looks like a little bit of a warning sign, doesn't it? So I'm going to leave him in, or her possibly, in peace. Maybe it's nesting nearby, it's got some chicks. But yeah, I started using it on the basis that there is a tradition of using, in the past anyway, the leaves of ash for tea. So cooked, obviously, in a sense, and that the keys can be eaten as well, and are really delicious as a pickle. We've got various grasses. Not sure. It's a very weak area botanically for me. What's that? What, there? Oh, I was just identifying some plants. Or failing to. Ah, hogweed. Yeah, there's lots of that around. Well, it's actually really, it's quite good to eat if you're careful how you harvest it. Oh yeah, definitely. That is true. See ya. So it is kind of interesting that I think to a large extent, like culturally, we really have lost quite a lot of our knowledge of wild plants. But I think where a plant can potentially, cause you some trouble, be they, or fungi, death cap mushrooms, or yew needles, or hogweed, there is a familiarity still with it, which is kind of nice because it's a gateway to thinking about plants in other ways apart from them just being dangerous. Now here we've got a dog rose, maybe a field rose, that's still got some hips. I wonder if there's any that are still hard. No, very unlikely at this time of year. They're probably all really fermenty if I tried to eat that. But I was talking to you right at the beginning about the difference between Rosa rugosa hips and dog rose hips. So these are the dog rose hips. More kind of that shape than that shaped, which the Japanese rose or beach rose is. Now this was on my list, and this is not an edible leaf. Something interesting going on there, some kind of ghoul growing in there. Not an interesting leaf, but I mean, not an edible leaf, sorry, it is a very interesting leaf, just in the sense that I just find it so wonderful. I guess it's the leaves when they're at their very juvenile kind of kitten or puppy-like stage, if you like, which makes them so, to my mind, just so kind of endearing, so cute, so adorable. So we have here, well, let's see if there's any evidence on the ground of what that is. You might not know, or you might know. Let's have a look at the bark. It's quite a young tree, but there's definitely some evidence on the ground, because this is a thing. I mean, you don't just have to botanically identify the features of the plants as they're growing, but you can look for other evidence around. He says probably not finding any, but yeah, sure enough, and it was pretty certain I was going to. We've got the old husk of what was covering the sweet chestnut. The sweet chestnut there. We have here some great willow herb. So I love to harvest this as tea. It's an excellent one for tea. The Russians used to use it as tea. Possibly they do in some places still. And so that would be stripping off the leaves and either just drying them or using them fresh, or as I like to do is bash them and oxidize them and kind of wrap them up in a damp cloth for a couple of days, and they go darker and the flavors develop. It's really nice. Some people, particularly when this is a bit younger, but this is just about okay if you want to do that, and it's kind of nice actually when you can do two things with a plant. So we could strip off these leaves, and then we've got this succulent bit of stem left, and either like that, or we could take all the leaves off. And some people cook that as asparagus and enjoy it. For some reason I just don't enjoy it. I don't like it, but it is something which people do. So with all these things, I'm always reluctant to say what's nice or what's not, because my experience is, I mean, it's, you know, it's a kind of cliche, everyone knows that tastes differ, and it's, you know, the sense of smell, taste, it's all highly subjective. And over the years of running courses, and I remember at the beginning I used to pick a plant and we used to stand in a circle, and I used to say, this tastes like X, Y or Z, or it's delicious and it tastes like this or that. And then, you know, a lot of the time people would agree with me, but I think half the time they're probably just agreeing just for the sake of not wanting to kind of contradict. And I've been running courses now for, goodness me, quite a while, since 2003. Shall I talk to you? So it's like we're not really looking at plants so much anymore. Ooh! Let's say the sun has burst out and just turned that the most incredible sunny yellow. Now some people really dislike seeing fields of oilseed rape, but it just brings joy to my heart. Just, you know, that lovely colour. But anyway, so, you know, so a couple of years of doing that, and then I realised it was a very silly thing to do, because I wasn't tapping into people's unique subjective experience. And now, whether I like something or I don't like something, but as long as it has a tradition of use as wild food, we kind of go around the circle and look at this, and I ask people what they think it tastes like, or whether it's nice, or, and you know, we get so many different perspectives on that, different things. Some people absolutely love, some people, you know, half the group will love it, or like majority of the group are love something, and some want to be spitting it out saying it's disgusting. So, and someone will say it tastes like peaches, and someone else will be saying it tastes like crab. But here we are, another ash a little bit further on. Now these are exactly the kind of size of the leaf clusters I would use as a vegetable after removing the bitterness. But we've got the young ash keys now. Now they are just about the size for pickling, and could go a bit bigger. But of all the pickles you could possibly make, I think ash is one of the most satisfying, partly because of the appearance, but also the ease of like gathering. I mean, look at this. So let's just look at this ash tree. The point being that this ash tree is absolutely laden with ash keys. So, you know, there's enough just from this one tree. Even if you were to take half of it, you'd have enough. And you really enjoyed pickles, you'd probably have enough for a year worth of pickles. So, yeah, it's something that you can do without worrying that you're depleting the kind of ash key the ash keys in the area. Look at that. So I'm going to gather some of these and make my first ash pickle of the year. Gonna pick them right at the edge there so that the cluster kind of holds together. So when you're serving it on a cheese board, it's really nice. Also, like when you come to eat them, although the stem is kind of tough, you can just like drag them kind of all off the stem. So I've gathered quite a few of those, probably enough to make a 2-litre kilner jar worth of pickles at least, actually. And I thought I'd try one last thing. I've not done this for quite a few years now, so it might not work. But that's making whistles, ash tree whistles. You can use willow as well and various other trees as well. So got to select a nice bit of wood that's not too thin, not too thick. Let's see if we can find a good bit. This bit there looks quite promising. So you want a bit that's kind of long and smooth with no kind of nodes, kind of like that. You don't want that. Right, so I get that, I'm going to cut that off. And then I need a hard surface. I'm going to go over to that gate over there. So I can kind of bash it, which is the next stage after I've cut it. Got a bit of ash. I just kind of sliced it off like that. Then gonna make a little hole. This might be too short, this bit I've got here. We'll see. Score all the way round. Not going to use the gate, I'll just use my leg. The challenge is to do this without splitting the wood. It's a lot easier said than done. Years ago I managed to, as a challenge, someone at a pub challenged me to make one of these in under a minute. I managed to do it in 59 seconds. It was quite a fun thing to do with kids. I remember I was in a pub garden and a lot of the families around there, they wanted me to show like kids how to do it, but obviously you can't kind of let really young kids, which, and there are lots of them gathering around, use kind of knives like this. So what I did is I showed them and then I got them to instruct me, and I did exactly what they said. So of course if they missed out a stage and they said cut there and it wasn't appropriate to cut there, I would cut there and it'd go wrong. But eventually they managed to instruct me all the stages exactly, and together we made a perfect ash whistle. Let's give it a twist. There we are. Loosened that up. So it's going to make a mark. So that should just pull off. Now there's several ways of doing this. Some people kind of make a notch down here, but I'm going to go for the method where you do this. that. Actually, a little bit more, just a bit more. Now, this particular version, you chop that bit off, and sometimes it goes flying, so got to be kind of careful. Keep an eye on it. Hey, it goes flying, there we are. Got it back. And it goes in there. Goes back in there like that. Then you wet your whistle. And the moment of truth. Oh. And the moment of truth, it didn't work. I need more practice, but it's a great fun thing to do when it does work. See if I can enlarge. No. But it just so happens that I have one I made earlier that did work. Yes. The ash whistle. Whoop. I think also called poachers' whistles. The poachers use them to kind of imitate kind of bird sounds to kind of help with their poaching activities. So I hope today you learnt some plants that you certainly met some plants through this kind of medium. It's never quite as great as obviously meeting them in person, as it were. But yeah, you would have seen things perhaps that were familiar to you, perhaps not, depending if you are, familiar with certainly the Saltmarsh might have been new to many people. But I would say that if you do get a chance to go, it's such a lovely, unique range of things, and hedgerow, of course, yeah, everyone's hedgerow is different, but some great things there as well. So hopefully you will join me next time. I'm not sure I'll attempt a live one again because they don't seem to be working at the moment, but it just remains for me to say thanks for watching, happy foraging, and stay safe, stay well, stay inspired. Get out if you can, enjoy nature, even if it's just opening a window and listening to the sounds of the birds. Catch you later.